Hey there, product marketers. Welcome to GTM Happy Hour, where I meet with experts from product to marketing, sales to success. Product marketing is evolving into go to market strategy leadership, and PMMs are having to find ways to connect with the cross functional team members they need to lead go to market launches. I'm Jamie Walsh. I'm a product marketing and go to market advisor who's been in B2B SaaS for over 20 years. Over that time, I've had quite a few drinks with the experts that I admired, and it helped me grow to where I am today. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Today, I talked with Lincoln Merrihew, a fractional chief growth officer, to discuss the importance of storytelling in marketing, particularly in the context of pitching to customers and investors. We explored Lincoln's journey and experiences in a variety of go-to-market roles and the significance of data in crafting compelling narratives. We dip, dab, and roll into the emerging cannabis market, highlighting the unique challenges and opportunities it presents for marketers. We wrap it up with the importance of data collection and understanding market segments. Let's grab a drink.
Let's get to raising a glass.
Oh, yeah.
So it's been a good week.
Been a good week.
Great to meet you. What did you say you have? This is a hazy IPA?
Yeah, it's a Wormtown IPA, Wormtown from Worcester, Mass.
Okay. And today I am drinking the Weyerbacher Quadruple Ale. It's a Belgian style.
This is Wormtown Be Hoppy, just because we're so funny out here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cheers. All right. Well, Lincoln, thank you for joining me today. It's great to get a chance to talk earlier this week. And, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody else that's going to be watching?
Yep. Hey, everyone. I'm Lincoln Merrihew, seasoned executive across many industries, starting with automotive and then branching off into all sorts of other different verticals. I've kind of worked the entire commercial pipeline from forecasting and modeling through customer management, through branding, and up right now I'm a fractional chief growth officer, as well as providing some marketing and process support to several startups. I'm kind of at the top of the funnel now. I've worked my way up.
You worked your way up. I kind of did something similar. I started off in customer success for years. I was doing professional services implementations, and then I did product management. Then it went into sales, and then went into marketing. So kind of up that ladder as well.
Well, I think it's really helpful, because if you know all the touch points, good marketing needs to really speak to everybody. And if you're operating in a vacuum, like marketing qualified leads, and not understanding the sales process and the customer process, you're going to miss a lot. So I consider the diversity a strength.
Well, thank you. I feel like it's a strength, and there's definitely some things that I bring to the table that most people aren't used to in product marketing. But we were talking, and you were just telling me a little bit about one of your passions. I think is around storytelling, and
Right.
I know how important that is. To convey technical information to some non-technical folks, you
Right.
have to use some metaphors. You have to use some parallels and find unique ways to draw that attention. But tell me what you enjoy most about it. How does it apply?
Yeah, I think storytelling is as much art as it is science, and it's just what you said. It's conveying the value of a company or its products or solutions, but doing so in the language of the target audience, and really playing in what's important to them, both functionally, revenue-wise, and emotionally too. And being able to tell it that way is truly an art, because anyone that has a company, starts a company, they are very adept at talking about what it does and from their angle. But it's really hard to take that hat off and put the hat on of the customer and say what's important to them. That's where a lot of companies feel. You see a lot of websites, for example, companies that I've consulted to, the websites are completely upside down. And what I mean by that is, we've got something with here are the specs and here's what it does. And, and finally, what the benefit is way down on the bottom, or it doesn't even exist. And it's like, well, why do I want to, thanks for telling me that, but what's the motivation to buy it? And that's where it should be front and center, the customer first.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always talk about what I call value ladder, and it starts with the value, which is what the senior executives see most often or are looking for most often, and the end users or middle management are looking down the chain to benefits and capabilities, and
Yep.
then the people that are in the weeds are really all about the features, the things that they touch all the time.
Yep.
And going up and down that requires a little bit of navigation, right?
It does, but I think that's where good marketing is really strong. It speaks to all of those because you can convey something to a candidate buyer or user, and then you're kind of counting on them to take it upstream and convey everything you said. But really good marketing equips them with that. Say this is better, faster, stronger, saves you money, makes your job easier. All of the people along the way that make a decision, there's something in it for them in good marketing. So your message travels throughout the company as opposed to you relying on the one person you're talking to repeat everything you said exactly right all the way up the stream. Because as soon as that call or meeting is done, they're going to be distracted and they'll forget stuff. So that's really
Yeah.
like
Yeah, when you look back on your career, like what do you feel like was the hardest to sell in terms of telling that story? Like maybe it was
yeah.
early on when you're still learning your chops, or maybe it was just a difficult bridge to gap.
The one that was most exciting I can tell you about was at a startup called Compete Inc., later acquired by TNS and then Kantar and etc. It was clickstream data. So the company mined clickstream data in a very different way. So it wasn't about a website. It was about looking longitudinally across everything you shop for by day, by time. And so with that, it became something where we could say, I shopped for a hotel on Google on Tuesday. I went to Hilton the following Thursday, but I finally booked on Radisson 2 days after that. And that continuum of behavioral data is so powerful for so many reasons. And it really turns a black box into a gray box or a white box. The challenge was that no one had ever seen the data before like that. So we were trying to convey like it's clickstream, it's so cool. It's clickstream, it's cool. And it didn't really stick until we started showing business implications of what we found in the data. And I think I forget which hotel chain it was. Maybe it was Marriott, where we did a quick assessment. It said, all these people go to Marriott, then they book on Hilton, and we can tell you how many did that. And the average price of a Hilton hotel room is $150. And there were 10,000 of those people. And that's a really big number. They were on your website and they left. And they were in market people because they purchased. You had them and you lost them. It's not like, well, I wasn't really going to travel. They did travel and they booked. So like, we think we can help you solve this, $300 million problem. And it was such a big number. Our chief marketing officer at the time came up with the idea, but then our task is that was a vertical lead time was to create the individual stories. And it was so powerful. One page, like, hey, I think I found a $300 million opportunity. Do you want to talk and hear about my company? It was really great. And it was eye opening, and it was taking an unknown company with an unknown product and a disruptive, intelligent solution and actually gaining a lot of traction. But again, it comes down to speaking to the audience. If I said to the person at Marriott, hey, we have this clickstream data. It's really great. It's so cool. It'll tell you this, this, and this. Like we have a $300 million opportunity here, and I can prove to you that you just lost $300 million in a month. So, well, okay. And even if they dispute your numbers, they're engaging, and that makes it valuable. Yeah. So that was exciting.
That's a definitely a big opportunity, right? That's a big thing. What about maybe on the flip side of that, something that was easy, routine, but you had to do it over and over again, smaller ticket item. Do you have any examples of something like that where you told that story over and over again? Because I think that sometimes as marketers and even as salespeople, we get tired of the same story, right?
Yeah.
But we have to remember that on the other side is somebody who's hearing it for the first time. We're bored of it, but it sells, right?
Yeah.
It does the job. Maybe there was, been something like that in your life where it's been.
Well, there has been, but two things come to mind when you say that. The first is there's the marketing rule of 7. It takes 7 exposures typically to get someone to act. So even if you're saying the same thing to the same person 4 times, it may take 7, 8, or 9 times. So that's okay. The way that I kept it interesting is, let's say when I was working with the automotive space, is be the same message, but you take a more current topic to it. There's a gas crisis, and here's what we see in the data. There was a strike at GM, and they're out of cars, and so here's what's happened. It's the same intelligence, but you're spinning it with a more current, more relevant thing, like a weather forecast. It's here come the clouds, and here's today, here's tomorrow, here's the next day, here's a map, and it's doing all this stuff. But what makes it different is, well, it's winter and it's a storm, or there's a hurricane or a flood, or it's the same technique and cadence, but you're making it interesting by whatever the most relevant topic is.
Yeah. What do you feel like has been the thing that's been most resonant? Like if you had to pick through your your career there, what's something that sticks out that's really memorable to you to this day? Like
it's funny.
Tagline or something.
There's a couple of taglines. I was going to say, first, there's this great book that I came across called Selling to Veto. And I was at a startup, and the CEO was so into, like, everyone sells, which they should. Doesn't matter what part of the company you're in, you're selling. Selling to Veto is this great book that just boils down, like, here's what a veto is very important to top officer. And that could be a CEO, could be the budget holder. But it's just this very easy to read, simple, straightforward book. It's like, here's what veto cares about, market share, cost savings, revenue. And if you can't tie what you're talking about back to those, ultimately, it's probably not going to work. But I think my favorite tagline is there's two brands that have permission to do this kind of tagline. Not everyone does. And one of them is McDonald's, you deserve a break today. And one is L'Oreal, because you're worth it. And the reason I say they have permission is everyone knows what McDonald's is. They know what the product is. They know what the price point is. They know what the quality is going to be. They know all about it. And everyone knows hair color. They know what it does. It turns your hair from one color to another color. That's it. Everyone knows this. So you don't have to explain the brand name or the category. So what do? So you play to the emotions, and you deserve a break today. It doesn't say anything about burgers or price or clean tables or menu choices. It's just like, Jamie, you work so hard. We appreciate that and recognize that. And you shouldn't have to cook tonight, so we're going to do it for you. You deserve that. And it's like, I do. And it's just such an interesting way, because all the rest of the brand tenets are established to go with the emotional play. And then L'Oreal, it's like, you want to change your hair color for whatever reason, you know what hair color is, but you're a special person and you deserve a premium product, which is what L'Oreal is. You're worth it. And there's both of those, to me, are just so clever. Not every brand can do that, but an established brand can do that and really play on the emotional side of it. I just think they're brilliant.
Yeah. Now, throughout your career, there have been a couple of times where you've led and helped with the fundraising or some investor pitches. So maybe talk a little bit about, first of all, the difference between pitching to versus pitching to an investor group.
Yeah, it's really, the needs are so different. So a customer is, how will it make my life better? And an investor group is like, well, how can I make money on this? Which would make my life better? But the approach is very different. And for a pitch deck for like a startup, it's often around something simple, like a little bit of emotion, like, well, I really wanted to get product X and I couldn't find it anywhere that, was high quality and a good price. So I just came up with something myself and decided to make a company. And that's like 5% emotion. The other 95% has to be business. So how big is this market, the total addressable market, the TAM, it's called? What's my differentiator? How much of that market do I think I can capture? How much will it cost to capture it? What's the revenue? What's the profit? And then I need some money to get me there, to get me started. I need a little fuel in the tank. But it's such a different, like, I had this cool emotional idea, and then I realized 95% that there's a real business behind this. There's, $40 billion of revenue in this category, and I have no competition based on my unique approach. I think I can tackle this audience and this audience, 45% of that big number. And then I can go forward and do the job. And it's telling a story in a different way. It's like telling a story of from need to creating an entire company to an exit strategy 5 to 10 years out. Where if I'm trying to sell you hair color or, hamburgers, it's like your hair's going to look good for a month before you have to color it again. Or if If you buy a car, it's going to last 4 years. If you take a vacation, it's, leading up to it. And then the trip itself is a month or two. So it's a longer term window, a little bit more matter of fact, but with a kind of emotional anchor. And the emotional part is key because that says, all right, this person is invested emotionally in this company and will work hard to make it succeed. Like they're not just phoning it in; they're going to be in it. But then the rest is like show me the money, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I've only done it once, and it was 20 years ago when I was getting my MBA, and or 15 years ago rather, and it's a lot more storytelling with data, right? You
Yeah.
have to know your numbers. I love Shark Tank,
Yep.
and that's one of the biggest things that I've learned from that is that you have to know your numbers inside and out, and that's part of the story. But it is the emotional part, like you said, to show that you're vested and that you have a passion for what you're doing. You see an opportunity. It's not just something that's fictitious living in your head, but
Yes.
it's actually rooted in reality. There's market data that you have, there's trends that you're seeing within your own business, etc. Now,
And
for those,
with citations as well, like this is Statista says this or someone else says this. I think a mistake I've seen is leading with all the numbers up front, like jam packing numbers. It's like let's
uh,
start with like the need and like what? All right, how big is this market? $40 billion. One of the ones I'm working on now, it's a $40 billion market that they want to tap into, and like you see that number, and it's like, okay, I'm listening. Just like with Marriott, like $300 million. Well, this is 40 billion. If we get 1% of 1%, is a big number. It's like, oh, all right, yeah,
so you talked about like the $40 billion market, right?
right.
And where do you, how do you get to that number? Because I've been in a situation where I've seen from a number of industry analysts that will give you different versions of the same number or the same market, right? But you have to make a determination about which one you're going to choose. So how do you get that information? Let me take me through that a little bit.
Yeah, typically it's going to be a Google search of how big is the such and such market. Let's say it's I don't know, hair care or something like that. And then think about any ancillary markets that could be related to that. So, what's a good example? We're launching craft beer. There's a new craft beer, and I want an investor.
Mm,
It's probably not a good example because the craft beer market has kind of come and gone, but
no.
yeah. But let's just say it's craft beer, and then you can just Google how big is that market. But then if you take a step back and say, well, it's not just that I'm carving out a slice of the craft beer market, I'm carving a slice out of all the beers, the entire beer market, which is it's pretty easy to kind of Google and figure that out. Maybe you get the whole beer market. I have no idea. Is $1 billion or $40 billion? It's probably huge. And then you find something that says craft beer market is estimated to be 22% of that. Okay, then you do the math and you can figure it out. But as long as the number is really big, I think, whether 5 or 10% either way, and you have a source to back it up, and even if your investor says, "I don't believe that source," you've engaged them, and you can say, "Okay, that's great. Let's work on sharpening the pencil on what that number actually is. Maybe it's not 40 billion, it's 32 billion, or it's 60 billion."
And maybe you've said this, but how do you go down a level deeper, right? The serviceable market, right? How many you as a company think that you can gather in year one versus year five? And also as it pertains to the other competitors and what they're going to be taking from the market, which you have to address as a reality is that you're not going to be taking 100% of the market. So how do you go about that process of
Yeah.
figuring out like where your serviceable addressable market is and your year one number, et cetera?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the needs that your product provides. So let's say it's homegrown vegetables, for example, something like that. You get a new innovative way to do that. It's like, okay, well, how big is the vegetable market? How big is the homegrown market? The gardener market. Take a bunch of those and kind of create a Venn diagram and say anywhere in here we can play. But where we think we're going to have the most success is climates where it's cold in the winter and people have to grow indoors, and that's our hook. So, okay, now we've got it down to half the country, north of the center, where there's a winter, and you can kind of break it down into pieces that way. But the business plan really is a function of how much marketing you put into it, the extent to which you are first mover, first striker in the space. If you're the first one in, like Tesla, for example,
Mhm.
you can kind of write the rules. If you're second, third, and fourth, you're not. So that's going to tell you how quickly you get in. You have to decide whether, if you're the second or third one in, are you going to say we're better than the first, or just go completely different? A lot of different tactics. But I think it comes down to the personas, and the customer personas are really important. That's part of the story. Like here's Sally. She likes to grow tomatoes. Or here's Kevin, and he likes to use, make things at home. And so he wants to buy drills, for example, like battery powered drills. So it's understanding their needs, and then say, here's what share of the total population we think fits those personas.
What do you think about making a decision between best and just plain different?
Yeah. So I think just plain different is much harder. I would think different and better because we're different would be the best approach.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're different, but I can guarantee you that difference is an advantage. It makes it better.
Right. And difference in the outcomes that you're getting to, and the reason why you're getting there. Yeah, I think that it's hard to say better, because sometimes you get a lot more questions and
Yeah.
about, proving something
Yep.
versus, this is what we've seen, and it is different than what we're seeing in the market, but it is, but it is in fact a better outcome that we've seen in our customer base.
Oh,
I'm
I
pause.
think a good example might be like the housing industry when they started having composite siding. It's made out of like pressed concrete. It looks like clapboards, but it's not. So you look at that and go, okay, that sounds like an interesting idea. Well, how does it work? It's like, well, every house has siding, most of them anyway. Um, Wood rots and doesn't hold up. Aluminum is noisy and dense. Vinyl tends to crack and fade. So we've got something that won't crack, won't dent, won't fade, won't rot. It's a better product, and therefore we think it maybe, not saying it's better, but we see four alternatives, each of which have very annoying problems, and people have been sold a bill of goods about why they're better, and they weren't. So our solution solves all of the problems with one product. That's just kind of an interesting example. I've been kind of fascinated by cement board, and then they press the grain on it to make it look like wood.
Mhm.
So it looks like everything they're used to. In fact, it looks better than aluminum siding, and it solves all the problems. And yeah, maybe it costs more, but if you never have to replace it for 50 years compared to wood and everything else, which is like maybe
Right.
25. So the ROI is good. It's easy. It's fast. We don't have to really cut down on trees. We can make it in a factory. There's so many different things, and maybe you don't say it's better, but it says this solves all of our competition has problems, and this one product solves all of the problems at once. So as long as we can get traction and market it and explain it, then we're going to be good. And it installs the same way as regular stuff. There's some special tools, but for the most part, it installs the same way. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, I imagine you can't hang it on the side of the house the same way as wood or vinyl or aluminum, but nonetheless.
But it doesn't, as I recall, it doesn't stretch or shrink like wood will. So like when you put up wood, you may have to, fill in a gap, or for the vinyl, you got to put the trim has to overlap the siding because it'll stretch so maybe it actually saves time.
Right.
But the point being that, like, in the long run, when you say to a customer, what's your biggest investment? My house. Great. And what's the biggest investment on your house? Like the walls and the roof, like maybe the furnace. Okay, so what do you like about your roof? It's a 30-year roof. Well, wouldn't it be cool if I could offer you 60-year siding? It's like, wow. So I think that's just a neat example of, maybe it's not the best, but you can say we know there's problems with everything else. We can document it. Our product doesn't have those problems. So that's kind of an approach.
Yeah. So I know that you're working with a cannabis startup, and there's a lot of those, up and coming and growing. You mentioned earlier the craft beer market went through
Right.
a big, revolution, in the knots, the teens of 2010s. and maybe right now we are seeing the era of cannabis. So maybe talk a little bit about your experience there and the storytelling that you've built up in that market.
Yeah. So first, I would say I'm pretty industry agnostic. If there's a good story to tell and there's a disruptive company, it's to me it doesn't matter whether it's cannabis or power tools or cars or anything else. So the market itself, the cannabis market, if you're not familiar, is a $40 billion industry. It's legal to consume in about half the states in the U.S. So hundreds of millions of people are exposed to it. Like craft beer, if you remember when craft beer took off, one of the subsectors of that was make your own beer at home.
Mhm.
Because so it was like big company beer doesn't have flavor. Craft beer does. It's kind of expensive. You couldn't make it at home. So one of my the startups that I'm working with is actually working on homegrown kits to grow your cannabis at home. And the novel approach to it is right now cannabis is illegal at the federal level, so you can't ship it across state lines. So if you're in Michigan where it's recreationally legal, you have to grow it there, you have to test it there. It has to be within the state. The guy I'm working with, his approach is to ship planter kits with seeds, and seeds technically are not illegal, so can be shipped across state lines.
Wow.
So you get like soil and a container and little nutrient boosts and the seed pod. So in terms of telling the story about that, we started with here's the size of the market. It's 40 billion. It's half the states in the U.S. where it's legal, which is a lot of people. Then you go, what are the problems today? Well, if where those states are legal, you can buy it at a dispensary, but retailer, but the quality, you don't know where it came from. There's no cradle to grave testing on this. And then we include a bunch of news articles that says, contaminants found in Michigan and mold found in California cannabis. And a couple of articles and we didn't write these. These are just like, this is what's happening in the marketplace because testing isn't quite what it needs to be.
Mhm.
So we have a situation where there's a big market. There are concerns about quality, flavor, the retailer experience, or desire for discretion. Wouldn't it be great if there was a solution? And the homegrown cannabis is that solution. Yeah, but I don't know how to grow cannabis. It's too complex. Well, we have a kit that makes it super simple and a guarantee. So we ship it to your house. It comes in a discrete box. It comes with the soil, the nutrient, the boost, and instructions, things like that. You plant it, you grow it, and you harvest it. You know exactly what's in it because you grew it. There's the discretion factor because it's in your kitchen or something like that.
Right.
There's no worry about mold or anything else. So there's a big market with known problems, and this is a solution that because it can be shipped across state lines, it avoids the hassles of I have to set up in a state and operate in a state. So it's a really interesting approach to a novel problem. He's got first mover, so he's trying to get first market. He's already up and running. It's just a matter of getting. So he has the products and the warehouse, and he's shipping. It's just a matter of getting funding to really build out the marketing and the inventory, so he can do a hard push.
Yeah, I'm gonna put my product marketing hat on for just a moment, right?
Yeah.
And there's other countries where this has been established for quite some time, and I've worked in the Netherlands for quite some time, where it's obviously been legal, for at least 50 years. Now, what competitive natures are there in play here? I know that, right, you just mentioned you have some state boundaries, right? Because you can't do some certain activities across state lines.
Right.
So that creates sort of a bubble of competitive of a competitive landscape. Am I right?
It does, but this company can ship across state lines. So they from their central warehouse in Texas, they can ship anywhere legally. So anywhere that cannabis is legal to grow, of course. You check your state and local regulations. But because of that, they are not limited to that. And so the economies of scale are huge. So from one location, they can ship to anywhere that is legal in the states. The cost of materials is relatively low. It's seeds and soil and a container and a boost, which is really easy. It's all purchased through a website, which is very easy to operate. It's called a Chiba Pet, by the way, like Chia Pet, but Chiba Pet.
Chiba, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's super simple. There are different varieties there. You kind of pick what you want. So it's very discreet. It's very easy. It's got this guarantee. So that's kind of the approach. And so it solves the problem of I can't do interstate commerce, right? So, okay, that problem is solved. I'm worried about what's in my cannabis because there's no like FDA labels on it, 4% vitamin B12, and we promise no mold. There's some ingredients on it. So it solves that problem. It solves the discretion problem. It tackles both people who like to grow anything at home versus people who just consume it and are worried about, what's in it.
Yeah.
Or just want to try it. And it's easy and it's guaranteed. So that's kind of the model that is adopted. So yeah.
And right now you're in the pre-revenue stage with that product, or is it already in use and distribution, and you're looking for investment for the next round of growth?
It's for the next round of growth. It's in market now, and there's already some like social media reviews of it. People seem to really like it, and it's easy. And like, look, here's the plant I grew, and oh, this is fun. So he's trying to build a kind of a culture and a community around it too. But yeah, it's live and it's in market, and you can buy it now. It's just he needs the funding to really accelerate the marketing, build out the inventory, do some pushes like get reviews of it and things like that.
I think there's a lot of great stories to tell there, and there's a lot of emotion, right? Because the folks that really depend on cannabis for pain management, right?
Right.
There's a lot of trouble with just maintaining your card status for dispensaries, but then there is also the lowering of the costs and having the control factor, right? That you can really talk to a person who's who relies on using cannabis. So great stuff.
But it all comes, it's really the same thing again. It's storytelling. It's like, okay, what's in this case, the founder, had a need and said, I have a problem that the market's not solving for me. So I think I'm going to build a company, and, this is what's happening. But it still comes down to what's the business, I've got a solution. Who's the target audience? How do I convey that value of that to them in their language? And that's the hardest part, is take off your glasses and put on the glasses of the audience. And that's just so hard to do. That's why like good headline writers in newspapers are so good. Because if I wrote a story that said like, traffic on Route 6 is the headline, nobody picks up the newspaper. I'm dating myself, but no one opens up the article online. If we say like, traffic causes 4-hour delay and, woman in labor can't get to the hospital, like now, like, okay, I'm going to click on that. So it's the same information that's just conveyed to the audience who wants drama in that case. So it's really interesting. So I think I look at it as like a carpenter. A carpenter builds houses. Like, well, you only know how to build cape houses. It's like, no, it's lumber. If I can cut and I can nail, I can read a blueprint. I can build anything. I can build a colonial or a cape or a ranch. And I think sometimes storytellers get bucketed as like, you only know this industry. Mm-hmm. That's just so wrong, because if you're working for a company, everyone in the company knows what the product does. So you've got plenty of that expertise. It's like you talk to them and say, what does it do? And who does it benefit? And then you create the story that gets you there.
I always look at too, it's, if you want to scale a business, you can't rely on the individual anecdotes that you'll get through each individual sale, right? You need to have some type of data collection process where you're looking at that. And, even in the cannabis market, I'm sure there's, an ICP, and I always look at an ICP as a broad brush of many different segments of different buyers, right? Yep. Like I was mentioning, there's pain management, but in the areas where it's recreational, there's still markets for somebody that wants to grow their own and have that experience versus something that they have to go and look through what is available in the dispensary. So there's different stories to be told for those two distinct segments of buyers that I just mentioned. And there's probably, a dozen different segments. So it's very interesting for you.
Yeah. I was gonna say, as part of the pitch deck, we actually have like 4 different personas laid out. I mean, there's kind of the home growers and the users, but not home growers. But they tend to be varied in age groups, like all age groups, and it could be, an older person that grew up with it. Could be a younger person that just likes the organic experience. Could be someone medicinally. And these are also great gift items as well. So wouldn't it be fun to, someone who consumes and like, hey, I was thinking about you. Here's try this at home. But different age groups, different income stratas, and everything else. So it's a really interesting market. I mean, it's the same as alcohol, for example, where there are young people, there are old people, there are different categories, different brands. The market reacts differently. Like in good times, hard alcohol, hard liquor sells better. In bad times, beer and wine sell better because it's less expensive. So the market dynamics change too. But again, it's just so similar to every other industry I've worked with. I'm working with a couple of others that are trying to create better talent acquisition solutions. For example, like the process is terrible. I don't think anyone thinks it's great from either side. An applicant looking for a job or an HR team, a talent acquisition team. There's just too too many people looking, and it's just chaos. And so these guys have they're two different approaches that are really, really interesting, but it comes down to the same thing of trying to speak to the people looking for work and then speaking to the talent people about what the business opportunities are. I'll give you a quick parable. One of the guys' tagline was going to be "Put yourself at the center of your career." That was going to be to attract someone looking for a job. And I was like, okay, interesting. I kind of already am at the center of my career. So what happens if I'm at the center of my career? Well, you'd be better positioned to, find a job. It's like, okay, and then what? Like, why is that good? You find the job you love faster. Like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. Like don't put me at the center. That's not telling me anything valuable, but like find a good job faster. And for the talent side, it's like find the right candidates quicker. Make your company more productive by filling open roles with the best people faster or something like that. And it's really speaking to the target audience, the needs versus like what it does and putting yourself at the center. So.
Well, great, Lincoln. I appreciate the depth of what you've accomplished in the different areas that you work in. For those that want to contact you, what's the best way to catch up with you or see what you're doing?
Yeah, I have the very clever email address of lincolnmerrihew@gmail.com. No dot between Lincoln and Merrihew.
No dots.
No dots. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm the only Lincoln Merrihew out there, I'm pretty sure. I should trademark my own name, I guess. Or you can call at 508-981-4848, which is also a pretty good number.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that are very interested in some of the work you've done and the variety of things that you've done. So great.
Selling dreams across the tide with laughs and wits